Mario and Luigi. It's a series that completely revolutionized the traditional RPG format, gaining its own cult following across several different games. For a while, you could expect to see a new entry every few years, except the series has gone completely MIA, leaving many fans wondering, has the Mario and Luigi series been forgotten? Well, despite its downfall in recent years, I think there's a good chance the series gets the revival it deserves. And considering recent news, this may happen sooner than you think. However, before we can discuss the future of the series, including why it could be revived and how it could be revived, I think it's important to understand how the series fell, starting from the very start. The story behind Mario's RPG adventures has been tragic since before the Mario & Luigi series was even conceived. The same year that Super Mario RPG released, Square, the developers behind the game, announced that they would be exclusively making games for the PlayStation, essentially leaving the Mario RPG series dead on arrival. However, the core concept behind the game, taking the world, characters, and mechanics from the Super Mario series, infusing them with elements of a traditional RPG, was simply genius. So despite the ill fate of Super Mario RPG, the idea behind Super Mario RPG lived on. Mario RPGs were bifurcated into Paper Mario, developed by Intelligent Systems, and Mario & Luigi, developed by Alpha Dream. Now, Intelligent Systems has been working with Nintendo for decades, but at first glance, Alpha Dream seems like a bizarre choice. This was a fairly new company whose very few games at the time included Tomato Adventure and Hamataro Rainbow Rescue. Giving this company the keys to Nintendo's biggest franchise would seem questionable at best, but Nintendo didn't just trust Alpha Dream, they trusted the people behind it. Alpha Dream was composed of many employees that had previously worked for Square, including several people who had worked on Super Mario RPG years prior. Arguably, no group could have been more equipped to make a Mario RPG. However, this game wasn't just the Super Mario RPG redemption arc. This was a completely new game that was able to quickly establish its own identity. Legend of the Seven Stars always felt like a Mario game for RPG fans, as it still feels fairly similar to Final Fantasy games. However, Superstar Saga felt like an RPG for Mario fans. From the wacky characters in the world, to the creative abilities you learn, to the game essentially throwing turn-taking out the window by allowing you to both evade and punish your enemies' attacks, this was an RPG like no other. Still an RPG, but also very much a Mario game. And with this game's amazing format, it was able to solidify itself as its own series. Superstar Saga's sequel would be one of the first Mario games on the DS, leading to this monstrosity, and as years passed, even more sequels were released. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this series was exclusively on handhelds. However, these weren't just Mario RPGs on a handheld. Alpha Dream created games that embraced the features of their respective systems. For instance, in Bowser's Inside Story, when the player controls different characters on different screens, or turns the DS sideways to engage in a giant battle, it doesn't feel like some unnecessary gimmick. Rather, the use of the DS's features actually improved the game because they're perfectly in tune with the gameplay. And this clever game design helped the Mario & Luigi series reach similar acclaim to the sales of the Paper Mario series. I think it's fair to say that the Mario & Luigi series is iconic. It's also dead. Many fans would probably tell you that the series began to fall off with the release of Paper Jam, and I don't know. I never played it, and it just looks really generic. For a game that was supposed to be the ultimate crossover between the Mario RPG giants, it failed to include a lot of characters that are iconic to those series, and the whole thing feels like junk food. In both 2017 and 2019, Alpha Dream ended up releasing 2 remakes for some of their more iconic Mario & Luigi titles, and these ended up becoming the worst-selling games in the series. What didn't help was the fact that the Switch had already been released at this point, so people weren't eager to go out and buy a 3DS game, especially a remake. So did these games kill the series? Well, they killed Alpha Dream. The company was forced to declare bankruptcy. They had acquired millions of dollars worth of debt and were struggling to pay it off due to poor sales and rising development costs. As a consequence, we've yet to see another Mario & Luigi game since, despite Nintendo's current handheld being their most successful system ever. However, even though the series is gone, it's not quite forgotten. The series doesn't seem like it has much going for it now, but I wonder if the stars are starting to align for a new entry. Perhaps the Switch, the very console that killed the Mario & Luigi series, could be the same console to revive it. In regards to whether or not Mario and Luigi could get a new game, the simple answer is yes. Nintendo owns the series, and there's nothing stopping them from continuing it. Yes, Nintendo has the rights to Mario and Luigi. Shocker. I guess the real question is, would the series make a return? Well, at the very least, we know that Nintendo recognizes that people like this series. Superstar Saga was one of the first games to be added to the Game Boy Advance Nintendo Switch Online library. But an even more interesting acknowledgement of the series was included in a survey that Nintendo recently sent out regarding Mario RPGs. The survey specifically referenced Super Mario RPG, Paper Mario, and Mario and Luigi. The questions themselves were actually fairly detailed and asked things like which specific entries people like, which characters they like, and which gameplay mechanics they like. The survey suggests that not only is Nintendo interested in bringing back the Mario and Luigi series, but if they do bring it back, they want to make sure that they do it right. And let's be honest, why wouldn't they? The Switch has a lot of Mario RPGs, including this abomination. In all seriousness, Nintendo knows that these games are popular, and they have no problem capitalizing from them. This is made especially clear through the recent Super Mario RPG and Thousand Year Door remakes. Getting 2 Mario RPG remakes in 6 months is a bit peculiar, considering remakes are what seemingly killed Alpha Dream. However, these games appear to be doing pretty well. The Mario RPG remake already sold over 3 million copies, despite having the most mundane box art of all time, and I can't even pre-order Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door because it's been sold out. Given the success of these games, it really seems like the Switch overshadowing the 3DS is absolutely the reason the Mario and Luigi series met the fate it did. I think this survey was no coincidence. If Nintendo isn't already making a new Mario and Luigi title, they are absolutely considering it, and they would be stupid not to. Frankly, I think it's time for a new Mario and Luigi game. There's clearly a market for it, and the series is just awesome. It's pretty obvious that this is a transitional year for Nintendo, especially considering that they finally addressed that a Switch successor does indeed exist. And part of me wonders if this is the perfect time to release a Mario and Luigi game. If they want to test the waters for a new entry, this is already a year that doesn't really have a lot at stake, since they're going to pivot to new hardware next year. I think this could happen, given not only the recent Mario RPG releases, but also because we don't really know what Nintendo's doing for the rest of the year. We know the Switch will continue to get support going into 2025, but we just don't know what that support will look like, and we probably won't know until the upcoming June Direct. I think it's possible we get a new Mario and Luigi game announced then, but even if Nintendo doesn't release a Mario and Luigi game on the Switch, they could definitely release one on the Switch's successor. It obviously wouldn't be a huge system seller like a Mario Kart or a 3D Mario title, but the Switch 2 is going to need a lot of games to perform similarly to the Switch. People are already familiar with the Switch's gimmick, and while some hardware upgrades are in order, the games will ultimately be what drives the sales. The big trade-off with a new game, however, is that there's no longer an Alpha Dream. However, this has already been the case for certain Mario series before. Just look at Mario Party, which started being developed by ND Cube after Hudson Soft was acquired by Konami. Okay, bad example, but seriously though, the survey's level of detail makes me think that Nintendo knows well enough to pass the series on to a capable developer. Asking fans about their specific experiences with a series is never a bad start to creating a new game. In honesty, the Mario and Luigi series feels like the type of thing Nintendo would hand off to another game studio. But as to which studio that could be, I couldn't really tell you. Hell, maybe they could give the series to Intelligent Systems. I know the Paper Mario series has been in a bit of a weird spot, but hey, at least the remake looks good. Regardless, I think I've made my point. I think Nintendo can and should revive the series. And I think really the only question remaining is how. One thing I definitely don't expect is another remake. Superstar Saga is already on the Switch through Game Boy Advance Online, and porting a DS or 3DS entry onto the Switch, a console that obviously doesn't have 2 screens, seems very difficult, and it would probably take away from the gameplay. So even if we don't consider the awful history behind Mario and Luigi remakes, I still think a new game is the only thing that makes sense here. Now, as I mentioned before, the Mario and Luigi series has consistently incorporated gameplay mechanics that revolve around the system's core features. At first glance, the Switch doesn't really have any gimmicks outside of its hybrid nature, which wouldn't really affect the gameplay. However, the Switch's controllers actually have a lot of features that are often ignored. Things like the IR camera and HD rumble are only used in a few select games, and honestly, they just feel like features that have been crammed into the controllers, despite offering nothing beyond hardware costs. With that being said, I would love to see a Mario and Luigi game that actually makes use of these gimmicks. Many enemies from the Mario and Luigi series have tells that let you prepare for their next attack. attack? What if an enemy throws a projectile off to the screen and your controller sends you a signal using HD rumble to indicate which brother the projectile will target? So for instance, if the controller sends off a strong vibration, you know the attack will target Mario, and if it's a light vibration, you know the attack will target Luigi. I definitely think we could see an implementation of gyro controls as well, especially for the bros attacks. We saw this in Dream Team, and it worked fairly well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see this feature return. Lastly, I would love to see the idea of implementing some kind of use for the capture button. Like, maybe there could be an enemy who's scared of getting their picture taken, so snapping a screenshot will cause them to run away. I'm not sure how easy this would be to implement coding-wise, but it would be very funny to see. Something we need to see, though, is some more personality. This is where Paper Jam missed the mark. I love all the original characters that this series has introduced over the years, whereas Paper Jam relied way too much on traditional Mario characters, such as the Koopalings. A new game will need some new characters, as these characters are what make the Mario and Luigi series stand out from other Mario series. Of course, the return of a few fan favorites would be a welcomed addition as well. I love some of these original characters, like Popple and Prince Peasley, but also, what happened to Fawful? Fawful is arguably one of the most iconic characters from the series, yet he's been absent for 2 games. He needs to make a return. However, while we're on the topic of characters, let's discuss playable characters. Adding new characters with entirely new abilities and attacks would be the exact kind of shakeup that the series needs, and I think I know just the characters for the job. I want a Mario and Luigi game where you can team up with Wario and Waluigi. Having 4 different characters may seem like it would be difficult to control, but I thought this worked really well in Partners in Time, and I wouldn't mind the extra challenge. I would love to see how they would incorporate a Mario and Luigi moveset. Like, they could give Wario Garlic Breath or his dash from the Wario Land series, and Waluigi could use bombs or even just pull out a tennis racket. That would be really funny. Not to mention how seeing the 2 rival pairs of brothers work together can make for a really interesting story. They could have a story where the team is forced to work together to prevent the world from being destroyed, or maybe you could bribe Wario and Waluigi to make them join your group. Either way, if you have a villain that steals coins from Wario and Waluigi, that's about all the motive they would really need to share a common enemy with the Mario brothers. Wario and Waluigi are really interesting characters, but we rarely see them get the spotlight, and I think this would be the perfect opportunity to see them take on a more prominent role. Anyways, that's just one direction I would love to see this series take. Of course, I would just be happy to see a Mario and Luigi game make a return, and I genuinely think that there's a good chance it will, all things considered. Let me know down in the comments below if you think Nintendo will revive the series and what you would like to see in a new game. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to check out this video right here where I ranked the best box arts on the Nintendo Switch, because it's definitely not Super Mario RPG. Alright, see you later.